Perfect. So welcome everyone to the 48th meetup. Today we have a small or good agenda as always. First of all, we will do a quick overview about what happened in the Power BI world or what happened with the meetup. Afterwards, I will quickly introduce what is new in Power BI. Then we have today Brian as a special guest, and he will do the Kusto experience in Fabric. And actually, I wrote it also on LinkedIn. We had Avna last week in our office in Basel. He's one of the product managers of Kusto. And honestly, if you don't know the technology, for me, it's one of the most amazing things I learned this year. So stay tuned. Invite all of your friends and colleagues next to you in case they're in other meetings. They should cancel everything and join our meetup. But send them the right link because otherwise they will end up in the wrong one. And at the end, we will do the continuation of our Fabric journey. Today, we will learn how we can create a data lakehouse. As mentioned already before, we have a few changes of the Fabric user group. Until now, it was called the Power BI Meetup Switzerland. And now we will call it the Fabric User Group Switzerland because we will extend a little the focus of the user group. We will still have a big focus on Power BI, but we will also include other topics around Fabric. Also, we're moving the community. Until now, we were on meetup.com. We will now be at the official Fabric User Group community website. And for one more month until the end of September, the meetup page will be up. And from then on, the page will be closed. So I would kindly ask all of you to join the Fabric User Group community.
Where do we do that?
What do you mean?
Where do we join that?
The link I will post in, I think, in the next slide or in one of the next points.
Okay.
I will also push it in the chat, and it's just another platform, but we will move everything to the Microsoft community and away from Meetup. Also, the recordings will not be in Teams anymore. We created a YouTube channel that's called Fabric User Group Switzerland, and we will also create an own logo. We had a few issues. We wanted to do the vote this month, but we're still waiting for a few logos. And also, if you're a designer and want to do or propose one of the logos, feel free to reach out for Christian or me. And in the next month, we should do the voting to get a logo for our Fabric user group. Then what will stay the same? We will mainly focus on Power BI topics. We will have a monthly user group call, again, from first Thursday of the month, always from 4 to 6 p.m. And we will or try once per quarter to do an in-person meeting. And so far, nothing new. Christian and me, we will continue to lead this user group. This here is, Stephen, as you asked, this is the link for the community. I will post it in the chat once Brian starts presenting. And this is our YouTube channel. If you just type for Fabric User Group Switzerland, you will also find it. If you have ideas, as mentioned already, for the logo or the branding, feel free to reach out for us. And as I mentioned, until end of September, Meetup will be shut down. Not whole Meetup, only our group. And we will migrate completely to the Fabric community. Then let's start with our first point. What is new in Power BI? This month, there were a few updates, not the biggest ones, but a few nice ones. First of all, we have now the possibility to create smooth lines for visuals. That's an option that was requested since a long time. I also remember discussing with many of my clients. You can easily do this if you have a line chart or I think it's also for a shape chart, and you go to the Format tab. You have then under lines as line type, you have the possibility to use a smooth line. And as you've seen so far, we had now a very rough line that is really going from one dot to the other. And with a smooth line, as the name promises, it's making the whole thing smooth. In case you didn't know, there's also the step possibility, but that's since quite a while. And now, as just mentioned, we also have a new possibility. to add the smooth line. This makes a lot of sense for many cases. I just wanted you to know that this option exists now within Power BI. The next thing that we have is again a change with the on-object interactions. We have now a new plus button on the side. And now with the plus button, we can decide which elements will be displayed and which ones will not be displayed. And what is important, this setting will be saved in your Power BI desktop. So whenever you open a new report or start a new report, the setting will remain. You can now also open multiple tabs. I will also show this in a minute with if you hold the control key. There's one thing that I honestly didn't like so much. So on the side, you don't see the whole bar until you activate anything in your panel. For example, you have to activate the format panel, and then you can activate the different panes. For example, the data, you see it will appear here: bookmark, selection, performance analyzer, sync slices. From then on, you can close again the plus. And if you now click on one of the elements, you will open this. If you want to open multiple of these items at the same time, as mentioned, you can hold your control button. And when you click, then it will open all next to each other. One small disadvantage, if you close one of the panels with the X, it will also disappear from the site. So you would have to activate it again. If you want to minimize it, you have this small triangle, and then you can choose you just want to collapse it. For me personally, I think it's one click too much, but if you have already a close button, but I think it's a good improvement. And as mentioned, these settings, they will remain. So you can now have all of your items here on the right side and just switch between them. Then there will be an update, or there is an update on the Power BI mobile app. You also will now be able to manage your data sets from the mobile app. You will not be able to completely manage them, but what it works at the moment or with a new update is you will have a refresh button. So if you go to one of the data sets and you want to refresh it, you can do this in your mobile app. Also, it will show you refresh errors. For example, when, as you've seen in the right screenshot here, you see already what error there is. And when you click here on see more, you will see all of the details. So now you can already try to debug your workflows on the way to work. Last but not least, there's another update this month. There is an improvement in the low code of paginated reports. Paginated reports, until now, you had to do with the report builder. It's quite an old tool. And it is kind of complicated if you compare it, for example, to Power BI to create paginated reports or static reports. For this, you now have the possibility with a low-code approach. I can also show you that quickly. For this, you just can go to either one of your data sets or your One Lake Data Hub. And if you then have one of your data sets, you can just go to the three dots and say create paginated reports. And from then on, you can, as I mentioned, with an easy low-code approach, you can create paginated reports. If you want to say, for example, you want your product colors, and then one fact like the sales amount, you can create a table easily like this. You can also add other elements like images, text boxes, and so on. And like this, you can create paginated reports. If anyone ever worked with a report builder, you will appreciate this technology, as in the report builder, it's quite a few more clicks. Let's keep it like this. Brian knows what I'm talking about.
Yes. All the functionality covered, or it's only a preview?
No. It's not a preview. It's, I think, already general available, but I could be wrong. No, but I think it's general available. It does not cover all the functions. So in the report builder, you can do a lot, like really a lot. Where Power BI is, let's say, not the best tool to display tables. In the report builder or paginated reports, you can do really a lot of things, really many things, but it's a lot more complicated to create them. This is really like a little bit like the Pareto principle. You have an easy approach with 2, 3, 4 clicks. You can create easy tables and display them. But if you want to go deeper, you still have to use the report builder.
Is it possible to extend it via report builder, that you start here and then switch to report builder?
I think you can download the RDL I have in mind, download report, and then it will download the RDL. And from then on, you can change the RDL with a report builder. So you can use this also as an inspiration to get your basic and then continue in the report builder.
Okay.
Or write it in XML if you want.
Yeah, just freehand in XML. Yeah, like it.
Yeah. All right, Frederick Malrad, was this fine or?
Yes, I had exactly the same question.
All right. That was a quick introduction. As I mentioned, not so many topics for today. And I'm more than happy now to hand over to Brian with the Kusto experience for Fabric. Brian, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen with you here. As you also had some problems, I had some problems. So I hope this is working now. Can you see my screen? Standard question. Thank you. Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm really glad to see a lot of people here, almost 50 people in the meeting. So welcome, and thank you for having me. My name is Brian. I'm the principal architect of data analytics inside Fennomore, Denmark. I'm a data platform MVP. I also do a bit of blogging on my blog and also on LinkedIn. If you scan this QR code, you will be directly guided to my LinkedIn profile. Then you can just hit connect, and then I'll gladly accept your connection. I'm a fast-track recognized solution architect from Power BI since 2022, and also certified trainer since 2018. Enough about me. If you have any questions during this session, just please interrupt me at the worst possible moment. That's fine by me. I'll try to answer. Or if you are more into chatting, then please write it in the chat, and then I'll try to remember to look in the chat so often. But I can't see the chat. Is that just me or?
Yeah, it's if you're not member of the teams, but I will monitor the chat, so I will anyway interrupt you if there's a question.
Yeah, because I cannot see the chat, so just interrupt me in any time. So thank you. I will start this with a brief look at the agenda. We'll start with the Kusto engine. What is it? What is Microsoft doing with the Kusto engine? Then a small tip of data modeling in Power BI. You need to be aware of a few things. Then I'll do a run through of the Fabric inside, of the Kusto inside Fabric, what you need to be aware of, and then the rest of the time I'll do a demo on what can we do in the Kusto experience and how can we leverage that inside the complete SaaS engine. Yeah. So the Kusto engine, well, no matter what service you're using, you'll be using the Kusto engine. The Kusto engine has just been updated to V3. Some old installations might be running on V2, but those will be updated in a very short while. Microsoft just announced that the V2 will be deprecated and closed. If you have any existing Kusto engines running, you don't need to change your scripts. You don't need to change anything. You'll just all of a sudden get a better performance because V3 of the engine is so much better than V2. So a good job from Microsoft right there. No matter what service you're using, Azure Data Explorer, Synapse Data Explorer, or Fabric in the KQL database, you will be leveraging the Kusto engine from that service. You cannot. The only place you cannot configure something, it is in the Fabric universe. You can only configure what amount of compute and storage you have based on your Fabric subscription. In the Synapse Data Explorer and the Azure Data Explorer, you can configure the VMs on storage optimized, on compute optimized, and how many VMs you would like in your cluster and so forth. But no matter what service you're using, you will still be using the Kusto engine. What is the Kusto engine? Well, out of the box is a distributed engine on several disks, primarily on SSD, but you can also configure it to do the service on spinning disks. It's a columnar storage, as you would see any SQL server with the column store indexes. It's more or less the same architecture here, not entirely the same because the performance here is not even comparable. And if you are using Azure Data Explorer or Synapse Data Explorer, then all clusters are based on Azure VMs. It is highly parallel. You need at least 2 VMs to do one cluster. In Fabric, we don't quite know yet what is happening underneath the hoods. I have written and asked the product group about this, and perhaps they don't know yet either. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to see what kind of implementation Microsoft has done on the Kusto engine inside Fabric and how they are leveraging that based on the Fabric configuration. But yeah, it is meant as a read-only and the delete rarely and no updates. Of course, you can do updates and you can do deletes, but the engine is built for immutable data. You get it in from your IoT device, from your streaming device, from your telemetry, from your application or something, and then you store it there, and then based on that data, you do your analytics. It is not meant to build a data warehouse on top of. Fast ingestion, of course, if you are doing read-only and ingestion fast, then you don't need consistency checks. So that is also why you get a different engine, and it is not optimized for data warehousing. As I said, in both Azure Data Explorer and Synapse Data Explorer, you need at least 2 VMs. Of course, you can add more VMs if you need a highly parallel universe with a high consumption. And you can put this inside a VNet. For the Fabric, right now, you cannot put that inside a VNet as we are speaking. I know Microsoft is working on that officially. So hopefully we will see the possibility to put the entire Fabric universe inside a closed network. But most of that to come later. I will not dive very much deep into what each VM is doing. You can get the slide here, and then if you like to read more about it, you can find it on Microsoft Online. Microsoft Learn. The only thing I would like to say is that if you are using Azure Data Explorer or Synapse Data Explorer, then you will always have an admin node, which is the node you are accessing, and then that admin node will distribute the query and the processing to all the other nodes in the cluster. So data modeling for Kusto and Power BI. Well, I believe that you are all very proficient in building a data model, and some of the standard guidelines of data modeling does not apply when you're using the Kusto engine. One of those is that simple table reporting is a good option if you can include all columns from dimensions to the table. This is quite opposite of what you would do in a SQL server, where you would have a large fact table and then many dimension table around that. In Kusto, that is sorry, let me rephrase that. In Kusto, when you are working with big data, then the engine is only accessing the columns that you are asking for, and those columns are distributed highly parallel on disks and on the compute storage. So it doesn't matter if you have one very, very broad table with all the columns, or you have 10 or 15 or 20, maybe 100 tables with a data model inside of it. The engine will still perform as good as any other solution.
Brian, may I ask you a question?
Sure, Stephen.
Could you explain us in simple terms what Kusto solves as a problem that wasn't possible before? So what's the problem that Kusto solves?
Yeah,
solves
sure.
that wasn't Yeah.
Sure, I'll try. Kusto is solving a problem where you, if you only had your SQL server and you had an IoT device, you had telemetry, you had big data coming into your data warehouse, you need to process that. Then in normal terms, you would do ETL or ELT and then extract, transform, and load, or extract, load, and transform, and load. And that amount of compute you need to do that is way more than what you get out of it on a standard SQL server, right? But in Kusto, it is the other way around. You can just pound it with data. It will absorb it. It will keep it, but it is not built for updates. It is not built for deletes. It is not built for slowly changing dimension type 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, all those stuff. But it will, no matter what, get the data, store it, and then once it is stored inside that Kusto engine, the Kusto cluster, you can immediately begin to query it with a performance out of this world. So the problem it solves is that when you have big data coming in, either structured, non-structured, or semi-structured, and you need a high velocity reporting based on that high volume data coming in, then you have the option to use the Kusto engine and the Kusto database, and in Fabric it's just called a KQL database, in order to leverage that engine. But
so basically, if I summarize, or what I learned is that Kusto is allowing you to do quick big data access. Is that
yes,
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It is by my decision that I don't talk about big data, because then we need to define what big data is. But if that's okay by you, then yes,
large quantity of data. I mean, it exposes, democratizes, it facilitates the easy access of large chunks of data.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
But be aware that don't build your data warehouse on top of this. Don't use this to build your data warehouse on, because you don't have the ability to do slow change dimension type 2 and all the stuff. So just see it as a data in, store it, data out very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I think there's a new term, observational analytics, which brings it, in my opinion, also to the point.
Yeah.
That even if you have somewhere JSON structures that you have to crack, that's simple. It's big data, but not only in the aspect of the data volume, but all the other shapes.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you. Any other questions? No, sure. Just keep them coming. I really like it. It gives a dynamic to this. Besides that, I'm just talking very fast. So thank you. The next thing inside Power BI, when you are using the data modeling experience in Power BI, many-to-many relationships is very, very hard to avoid. It's not a big deal, because all the queries that you are doing in your direct query in Power BI towards your Kusto engine will be translated to Kusto query language. So it is not a problem. You will see it when you build your data models inside Power BI. When you're in your direct query, the relationships will, in 99.9% of the times, be many-to-many, and that's fine. Don't be scared. Of course, star schema is fine if you just follow some guidelines. You need to tag your dimensions in Power BI to is dimensions equal true. I can show you that in a minute. Use only measures or columns from dimensions. Please don't use columns directly from your fact tables. If you need a column from your fact table, then as a measure, then please use some simple DAX as something. And dimensions can, of course, be imported and not in direct query if they are below 1 million rows, standard guidelines. So what are Microsoft doing at the Azure Data Explorer inside the Fabric experience? Well, they are giving us 3 services. The Event Stream service is a service built on top of Event Grid that has a very, very easy to access UI for you to ingest data live and then store it in your KQL database. You can also store it in your lakehouse directly from your event stream. You have your KQL database as a service where you can spin up a new KQL database, and then that database will leverage the engine from the Kusto cluster and provide you with the ability to do the next step, the KQL query set, the KQL queries towards your data, and then directly inside your Power BI. So those three event streams, KQL database and KQL query set, is the Kusto experience in Fabric. I'll show you that in a minute. Some might also argue that the notebook is also a part of the Kusto experience inside Fabric, but I see the notebook is just a Jupyter notebook that now you can access your KQL database directly from your Jupyter notebook. I have a demo on that later. The event stream has three sources. Either you have sample data that is provided by Microsoft. You can work with it to try to import some taxi data from the New York taxi dataset. You can import data from your Azure Event Hub or from a custom app. A custom app in this scenario is just an app that outputs streaming data, and you input to the event streams. You input an address where the streaming data is coming out from with keys and tokens, and then event stream will take care of that. The sources is again the custom app. The destinations is again a custom app. You can store this in a custom app that accepts streaming data. It could be an API. You can store it in the lakehouse directly or in your KQL database directly. So that was all the slides I have for today. The rest of these more or less 30 minutes will be on the demo side. If you have any questions, just please interrupt me and then we'll take it from there. So when you spin up your Fabric, your universe, I have this here. You will, I have cheated a bit because when you spin up your Kusto database, it takes 5 or 6 minutes for it to provision. So I've already cheated and started this one. What is important? Sorry, I did a click too much here. Go back. Did I lose connection? No. Here. Let me show you where you start this. All at the bottom, at the new experience in Fabric, you see the real-time analytics. This is the Kusto part of Fabric. You can create a database, you can create a query set, or you can create an event stream. The database, I just opened it here. The database is provided as is. I have imported some taxi data here. To your left, you will see the tables, the shortcuts, if you have any, the materialized views, the functions. I have done one function, and the data streams, if you have any. What is most important is the tables. This is where your data is stored. If you click the tables, just the tables here, you will see that I have an imported size of roughly 37 gigabytes of data, but the Kusto engine compresses this, and now it only fills roughly 10 gigabytes. If I had more tables, I would list all the tables here, and with the row count, the original size and the compressed size, and then I can see the actual compression on each table. What is also important is that out of the box, where is it? Here. Out of the box, the OneLake folder is inactive. I think the product group is changing this to be active, but out of the box, the OneLake folder is inactive. In order to get your data from your Kusto engine into your OneLake in Fabric, it is a copy. Then you need to activate the OneLake copy of your data to in Kusto. You do this on database level. Just open this pencil and activate it, and then you'll get an address to your OneLake folder. You can also find this in your OneLake application inside Windows. Once you have done this, data will begin to copy out to your OneDrive. Sorry, to your OneLake. If you need to use external tools, you have both the query URI and the ingestion URI. The query URI you're using to do custom KQL queries, and the ingestion URI is used if you have any application that you need to store data directly to your Kusto engine outside of Fabric, then you can copy the ingestion URI and use that. Nothing more to say about this other than the tables, of course, is containing also the metadata of each table. You can see here what kind of data types I have and so forth. The query sets, if I go back here, let's see if I have a query set here. This query set imports the data to my trips2 table here. I have stolen this directly from Microsoft's website, so don't blame me if there's any errors, and please applaud Microsoft when it works, because this is out of this world. Help us demo the Kusto engine. Run this, it takes 10 to 15 minutes, and then all the data from the taxi dataset is imported to the trips2 table right here. In order for you to see what is actually a part of this dataset, I have done this KQL script, KQL select statement. If you are unfamiliar to KQL, the Kusto query language, I will just briefly run through it. In KQL, I always need to start as a default to define my table, trips2, and then the pipe. And then I would like to summarize things. I would like to count, just a row count. This could be count star. And then summarize by month of year. I declare month of year as a variable, and then I set that variable to the month of year as the pickup date time from the dataset, and also group it by vendor ID. And then, of course, a new pipe, order by month of year as my variable here, and I can run this. I select something. There you go. This is quite fast. You can see if I go back, go back. Here. You can see how many rows I have. I have 235 million rows. And this select statement is done in 1.1 second. This is a normal performance out of Kusto, out of Fabric. This is a demo cluster of Fabric, so this is the F64 cluster size. But no matter what Kusto query you are writing against this engine, it will perform very, very fast. I've also built in a function. I have built a function that gets all the syslogs from the help cluster inside Microsoft help cluster. Microsoft provides you with a demo cluster in Kusto that's named help. Everyone can access it. In that cluster, there is a large table called syslogs. And I've made a function that extracts those syslogs directly to my Fabric cluster. Without moving data from the Microsoft cluster, I can now query that data from my Fabric universe. Let me see if I can. There is a small bug in Fabric right now, so I cannot.
Brian, I'm Johnny. Can I just quickly make a short question?
Sure.
Can you also query the data with a REST API?
Yes. There is possibilities to expose this data to the REST API, but there is a big but here. The but is that you cannot access right now, as we are speaking, you cannot access the Kusto data from an API. You need to access the Kusto data in your OneLake copy.
Okay.
Yeah, but the OneLake copy is actually quite live. I've tested it. It has, of course, some small lag of seconds from it is ingested to the Kusto engine to it is until it is until it is available inside the OneLake. But if you can handle that, manage that, then it's quite easy to use the standard API approach to the OneLake folder.
Okay, cool.
Great.
I didn't find the documentation for the REST API.
The REST API is the standard API for a storage account because the OneLake is just a storage account.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure. In order for you to see what I mean with this syslogs, I have done it very, very dynamically. In my function, there is a glitch as I tried to say before in Fabric, so I cannot show you actually what the get syslogs thing is doing, because I would very much like to show you the function beside this inside this get syslogs, the actual query. But I can show you what the result set is. The get syslogs accepts two parameters: the time window, how many days prior to this date that I'm in would I like to get data from, and what bucket does it need to group data by. Here it is giving me the last 200 days, and it groups data in days of 10. Let me show you. See, the first timestamp is January 11, and the next timestamp is 10 days after. So from January 11 to January 21, the SQL Server performance is 58.9 million on the log count. If I need to change, well, perhaps I would like to, okay, give me this in groups of 5 hours. Well, I can do that also. Now I get a timestamp in hours, and the next timestamp from 2 is to 7. So I have a very, very highly dynamic functions inside Kusto that I can put inside my Power BI, and then I can actually get the end user to type in a variable, and then the end user can define the level of aggregation that they need in the report inside a very, very simple variable or parameter in Power BI, and then they can get the data out in that aggregation level that they need. A very, very strong functionality inside Kusto. And when I have the slides done and I'll send it to Denis, then I'll add the get syslog function so you can play around with it. It is quite good. So when I need to get data to my Kusto query, to my Kusto database, I can do it either by using my ingestion engine from Data Factory in Fabric, or I can use the new event stream that live streams data from a source to my Kusto database. This is a Kusto demo event stream that I've made. It also takes a few minutes to start up. It is more or less just a beautified UI of an event hub. Sorry. Here on the source, I can select sample data, event hub, or custom app. If I choose sample data, then I need to give it a name, taxi data. Here I can either choose yellow taxi or stock market. If I choose yellow taxi and select add, then it starts to make a stream for me. That stream, I can do a small preview of it. What is the data that I'm getting in? If you already know the the New York City taxi data set, then you will recognize these columns. Now it is only reading it. It is not storing it. So I also need to add a destination. This could be either a custom app, as I said before, my Lakehouse, or my KQL database. My KQL database in this instance is my Kusto demo. destination. This is just the name. The workspace, I select my own web workspace, and then I'm given my Kusto demo database. Add a configure. Where would you like to store this table? Well, in my New York City taxi table, a new table or an existing table. Next, the source is the event stream. That's fine. I cannot change this, and the data connection name is my event stream in my is the data stream from my event stream. If you need to play around with the compression and other properties, you can start this here, but don't play around with it, because if you don't change this, then the data will be stored as it comes in and not in your other format. If you would like to start data retrieval at a specific date and not get too many historical dates, then configure it here, or else it will just take what it gets. Then it will try to look up the schema from the tables that it is getting. It is by default very often suggesting a text format. But I know that this data that comes in is a JSON format, and now you can see the preview is now pretty. I can read it, and I'm ready to save it to my Kusto database. If I know that there might be errors in the data, then I can choose to ignore it by clicking this button here. And then you will get errors that will demand you to do extra work in your data. So please just use this with caution. Then you do the summary, and now the fabric. Now the event stream is configuring your data movement, and it is done. So now I'm beginning to. It will start to give me a warning. That's fine, because the destination is not yet saved. Now it is ingesting from my taxi data demo data directly through my event stream and saving it to my Kusto demo database in the table called taxi data. If it needs to start up, and then in a few seconds you will see that the data preview will be there. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes a minute or two, or 3, or 4. Come on.
That's the demo effect.
Yeah, that's just the demo goes. That's fine. Interesting. Come on. There you go. Now it has started to ingest data from my taxi data. This could be an IoT device, and now it is saving it to my Kusto database. If I go back to my Kusto demo here, and I refresh the, then you will see I now have the New York taxi data again. But this is the ingested data, and I can now query it, show any 100 records from this table. I don't need, sorry. This there. New York taxi, take only 100, run. Now I see my data. If I need, perhaps take, do I have 1 million? I can just do a summarize, count. No. I have 11,500 rows now. If I do it again, this number should increase as time goes by. In a few minutes, it might be 15,000 or something like that. And now I can begin to do my Power BI reporting. But how can I leverage this inside Power BI once I have it inside my Kusto database? Well, Microsoft is helping us a lot here. At the top right corner, there's a Build Power BI Report button. And out of the box, I am getting a Power BI report. Sorry for my screen resolution here, so you cannot see. It is not very beautiful, but I think you get it that I can now add the airport fee and I can add a whatever. I don't know. Does this work? Yes, it does. And here I cannot control what I'm shown. So this is just a very, very roughly, very, very quickly first thing of my Power BI report, and I can save this report to Kusto. Sorry, Kusto demo report in my demo workspace. Continue. There. So now with a very, very few buttons and very, very few clicks, I now have a report. If I go back to my workspace, I should see a Kusto demo report. There you go. Now I have a report in Power BI without any further ado that I could send to my business users if I designed this a bit more, and then they could start to interact with the data live here. Very, very quickly, very, very easy to leverage the data inside your Kusto cluster. But that's not all. There's more. Just like a new iPhone release, there's more. There's also a possibility to use notebooks. A few weeks ago, perhaps now I can say a few months ago, Microsoft released the KQL magic in the Jupyter notebooks. So now you can do the percentage sign and then write KQL, and then you can write your actual KQL statements towards your Kusto cluster. You need a few things in order for this to work. Should I zoom a bit so you can read it? Come on. There you go. I need to install the KQL magic. It's done by this command. It says that the requirement is already satisfied because my computer is ready. That's fine. It installs a lot of things. Then I reload the KQL magic, and when I get this picture, then I know that the KQL extension to my Python kernel 3 is ready to go, and now I can begin to write my KQL queries. In order to do that, I need to connect to a KQL cluster. There's different ways to do that. For now, I will just connect to the help cluster. It is here, the help cluster at Microsoft.com, and the database there is samples. Let me connect to that. Now I'm connected, and now I can begin to write my KQL database scripts, and I can also begin to render stuff. Here I have rendered the trip count by hour of day as a bar chart. Here I get it. It is very, very fast. I'm still handling 253 million rows. If I would render this as a time chart, then it is also fine. But what if I have my data set in my KQL statement in a cell, and I would like to use that cell in further downstream options in my KQL, in my data world, in my database, in my data warehouse? Well, actually, Microsoft is also helping us there, because once I have a cell that contains data, this is a cell. It now contains the hour of day and the trip count. Well, I can reference that with this command: _KQL _raw _result _. This is now I'm referencing the prior cell, then .to data frame. So now I'm loading all of this data to a data frame, and now I can begin to work with it as any other data frame in my Python scripts as I would like to. Very, very powerful, very, very neat. If I were to do that with my trips data from my New York City taxi, again, I have stolen this directly from Microsoft, so thank you. I will import the NumPy and the pandas because I need those, and I will also import the scikit-learn and the matplotlib, and the Magic is ready. And here I will connect. Now I'm connecting directly to my own Kusto demo database. And how did I get this address? Well, it was the one that I showed you here. There in the query URI, I just copy this one, and then I paste it in here, and then I have the actual address for my Kusto database, and the database, of course, is Kusto demo. Did I run this? Yes, I did. Now again, I have a lot of row counts here. And here I'm rendering a time chart again of my pickups, and I'm now beginning to transvert my pickups to a longitude and the latitude, and pick up and drop off date time by vendor ID. And in order for this to work quite fast, I'm now narrowing down the data to the New York City area. These are the latitude and longitude for the boundaries of New York City. And this is where some of the advanced features inside the Kusto is starting to arise, because these here I'm mixing in standard Python machine learning data science options with the Kusto language. I will not dive deep into this on what is happening, just that you need to know that I'm starting to do some data science stuff on top of my data. And I am doing this in such a way that I have a parameter called Q that contains my Kusto query. It just needs to run. And here I might need to zoom out a bit so you can see it all. Come on. Go. Get done. Come on. It doesn't usually take that long. There you go. So now I have my latitude and my longitude, and I have my number of pickups. So now I can begin to build some sort of heat map to see where is the density of my pickups and my drop-offs inside New York City. And now I need to zoom out so you can see it all. This is a heat map of New York City, and I can now see by light where is the most dense pickup and drop-offs of the New York City taxi data set. It is quite powerful. I'm doing this inside a Python notebook, a Jupyter notebook, and I'm leveraging both my Python scripts and my Kusto query language. Quite powerful. And of course, I can also find I can pinpoint my exact 4 or 5 locations on where is the most dense pickups and drop-off places. And I get those here, and now I can mark it at my map, and I'll zoom out a bit. Now you can see where the with a star, and the size of the star is the amount of pickups and drop-offs, is telling me where the most dense traffics on the New York City taxi tabs are being done. All of this directly inside a Jupyter notebook. These 2 notebooks I'll share with you later, so you can try to work with them. The only thing you need to know is you need to do this on your own KQL database, and you need to import the trips2 tables that I showed you. I'll also give you those scripts, and then you're good to go. So based on this, and now I think my time is more or less up. I would like to say thank you.
You can also take a little more time if you want. You have another 10 minutes.
I have 10 minutes. Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice. Let me just go here. And let us see how many rows I have now. Now I have less than I had before. Wow, thank you. Perhaps I need to refresh this. I can just query it. Let's try again. Summarize. Oops, sorry. Summarize. Counts. Run. Now I have 81,000 rows. So things are streaming in now. If I would like to stream in data from my from an event hub, let me see if I can do that in 10 minutes. I need a new event stream, or I can just kill this one. No, let me build a new event stream for you. New, show all, event stream, import from event hub. Great. This is loading, then I'll go directly to my event hub. I have already, like, you know, when you are looking at the telly and seeing people doing food, I've already cheated. And I've already built an event hub, and I've already also made this event hub called Kusto demo. Based on this event hub, I can now, there is a preview called generate data, where I can generate example data directly in my event hub for that event hub to be pushed out to various sources or listeners. And in order to do that, I need the not this one, this one. In order for Fabric to read from an event hub, it needs the root managed shared access key. This shared access key is I've just put it to do whatever you would like. If you need, if you have high security, you need to either do send or listen on your event hub. But I've just do manage as the sake of this demo. So it is now ready. I need to ingest data from my event hub. The source could be event hub demo. This is just a name. The cloud connection is my event hub that I just created. It is figuring this one out. The consumer group is the default one. Let me show you that I need to create a new connection. I cheated too much. So the connection name could be Kusto demo event hub 2, just to be sure that I have my event hub name. I need to get that from here. It is my name, Brian Bönk. So let me just put that in here, Brian Bönk. The event hub is Kusto demo. That is Kusto demo. And now I need to get the shared access key and the shared access key name. The shared access key name was this one. And then the shared access key is, just take the primary key and copy that one. And then hit create. Now the cloud connection should, now you see the Kusto demo event hub 2. Now I have connected my event hub to my event stream. The consumer group is still the default. Come on. Default. And the data format is in JSON. That's fine. Now I have the source. Come on. Adding source successfully added. Yay. Let's just give it a second to figure things out. Perhaps it's just waiting for data, but I can, there in the event hub. Now I can generate data. This is a new preview tab, and now I can now generate dummy data to test my event hub if it works. I like the two bottom ones because that gives me the most data. This gives me a lot of records, and if I don't think this is enough, well, I can just send this 100 times. Excuse me. Now it is sending it. There you go. And Power BI should be able to pick this up. Sorry, Fabric should be able to pick this up. Come on. Demo Ghost is still here. It's fine. Let's see if I generate data here. Event hub. Send this 100 times. Send. Fresh. There you go. Now I have my events from my event hub actually, and now I can begin to save this data again to my KQL database. Kusto event hub save. The workspace is my workspace, and the KQL database is this one. Configure, and then as a new table, it could be event hub data. The source is this one. It's fine. Still needs to verify the data. Now it needs to verify the schema from the data, because perhaps it cannot. There you go. I know again this is JSON because I just did it, and there you go. I can now see the columns is fine, and I can do the summary, and then it creates the data connection, and it should start to ingest the data from my event hub. Close. And again, I can generate all of these data. Let me do 100 more. And 100 more. So we have enough. So now we should have 300 rows of data. And let us go back to my Kusto demo. And refresh this. Now I have my event hub data. I don't know why I have so many rows, but perhaps it is an error in the JSON schema. But I do have 476 rows, and here you can see it. It is stored inside my Kusto database, and now I can begin to build a Power BI report on top of this, and then the process is running once again. And I can perhaps do a group of this by whatever, I don't know, 4 period. Then I can save it. Event hub report. For this workspace, continue. There you go. And back to my workspace. Then I should see the event hub report. Refresh. There, event hub report. And now I have my report based on the event hub data very, very quickly. with a very, very limited amount of coding, I can now ingest data from my Event Hub and expose it to Power BI through my Kusto engine. And once the data is stored inside the Kusto engine, the Power BI report will be updated. So I think that's the last 10 minutes. So all I have to say is thank you. And if you have any questions, please, now's the time to speak up. I would gladly hook up on LinkedIn. If you are connecting with me, I will accept it. Or else just write me an email or connect with me otherwise, or else I'll see you around in the conferences all around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Really nice presentation. Are there any questions? At the moment, no more questions. I actually have a few questions.
Bring it.
So you started now the Power BI report out of Kusto. I imagine I know my users. If I create a Kusto cluster and I tell them the data is available, can they also just start from Power BI and create a report with the Kusto data? Do they know, or if yes, do they have to know how to query Kusto, or is it like clicky, bunty, draggy, droppy?
It is very much clicky, draggy, droppy. Let me show you. It takes 1 second. I have Power BI here. Get data, more. Here I can just write Kusto. Then I select my Azure Data Explorer Kusto, connect. Then I should connect to my cluster, and my cluster is my, let me find the cluster address once again. Kusto demo. And the query UI, copy this one. Paste it. The only thing you need to tell your end users is that they need to change this to direct query.
Oh yeah, otherwise it's importing the 300 million rows.
Yeah, you don't want that. Then it exposes your tables as you would any other things here. And then would I like to see my trips to table with my 200 and something million rows? Yes, that's fine. Load. It only reads the metadata, and I think it's 100 rows or something. Perhaps it's 1,000, I can't remember. And then now I have my data here, and I'm ready to do my stuff. I can do my passenger count by, I don't know, by something. Time.
Very nice.
I have a question. How does Kusto support real-time data analytics and streaming data scenarios, so as IoT environments or applications?
Good question. I don't know why this is not performing, but I know why, because there is too much data here. I will remember your question, but just a small comment here. Power BI will give you errors if you try to put in more than 30,000 rows in one visual. Then you'll see this. Can't display the visual. Then you need to redo your stuff in order to build your report. But you don't need to know Kusto. You don't need to know how to write Kusto queries, because Power BI is doing this for you. So you had a question, Stephen, about. Can you say it again? Sorry.
Yeah, how does it support real-time data analytics and streaming data scenarios?
It does support it. If your real-time streaming data is stored in is coming through the Event Hub, then you can use your event stream and then do that, or you can actually store your data directly in your Kusto cluster by using the ingestion URI, and then give that to the source, and then the source will save it there. And then once it is saved in the Kusto cluster or the Kusto database, then it is ready for reporting. It is ready at an instance. The Power BI report will be updated. So it fully supports the streaming data scenarios in the world. So,
are there any known limitations?
the only limitations I have seen is the size of the Fabric service that you're buying, because that describes the amount of compute you get out of your Kusto cluster. And all of the services inside your Fabric universe is sharing the same compute. But as I said at the beginning, as I do not yet know how the Microsoft has implemented the Kusto engine in Fabric, I have difficulties finding the actual bottlenecks in the Fabric part of Kusto. If you have your own private ADX cluster as a Data Explorer cluster, then it depends on how many VMs you have and how they are built.
Okay. Are there any common mistakes or pitfalls that users encounter that you?
The most common thing that let me stop sharing my screen here. The most common thing I see is that people are writing their Kusto queries as they would any other SQL query. In a SQL query, you typically start with your fact tables, and then you join your dimension tables, and then you filter, and then you do stuff. That's fine. Fine by SQL. If you do that in Kusto, you will get a performance hit. You need to do that the other way around. In Kusto, you need to define your dimensions first, and then join the fact. And before you join the fact, you filter your dimensions, and then you can join your fact, because then you are very, very heavily helping the Kusto engine to optimize the query execution, to filter the dimensions on the data that you only need, and then it will filter the fact table based on those dimension columns. That is the most common thing I see, where people are starting to access the fact table and then trying to filter it and then doing stuff. But you need to do that the other way around. Access your dimensions, filter those, and then join your fact, and then you're good to go. You get a blazingly performance. And if you don't know how to write Kusto, then the Kusto engine is also accepting SQL. So select star from table where group by is also working out of the box. So you don't need to learn another language as a beginning. But when you need to do advanced stuff, of course, you need to learn the Kusto query language.
Perfect. Thank you.
More questions? Dennis, you had a second one?
Yeah, I'm just interested. Do you know what would you say from your experience? How big is the average compression rate?
I have seen compression rate up to 20, but that is based on data that has repeatable values in all the columns, because then it can compress it. If you have data that is highly text-based, then the compression rate is not that high. It is more or less those 4, 5, 6 times the compression rate. But you will see an average of perhaps 5, perhaps 10 in the compression rate. But in my opinion, you don't need to think that much about it, because the data is what the data is. You cannot change it. It is an immutable data source you have. It is an IoT device. It is streaming data. It is telemetry. It is whatever streaming data you have coming in. Big data, semi-structured, unstructured. And then based on the storage, you then need to handle the data structures. But the compression ratio is yeah, on average, perhaps 4 or 5, 6. Yeah.
More or less like in every columnar database.
Yeah, because the columnar storage can only be done in 3 ways. I think perhaps kick me if I'm wrong here. And the way that the column store index is used in SQL, I think, I have not yet verified this, but I think it is the same way that Kusto is storing the data. So, yeah.
Okay.
By mapping things out to dictionaries and then doing stuff. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
There is a small comment also that you can also ingest data from blob storages or other shortcuts in Fabric. Perhaps you have touched on shortcuts already. I don't know, but shortcuts in Fabric can be added to your Kusto database, and then you can begin to write your Kusto queries towards those. So you can also share data.
All right. last call for questions.
Well,
3.
write me on LinkedIn. I'll gladly help anyone who needs it. Kusto is still a new universe to many people, so just hit me with your questions and I'll gladly help you.
Thank you very much, Brian. I really like the presentation. I also, especially fascinating, I found the graphic of Manhattan, that you can do that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you very much and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Then we will continue with our Power BI journey. Christian last week started a little bit with an overview. Today, we will have the second part. We will have until, if we didn't mention, until the end of the year, until December, we will break down Fabric into smaller parts to understand how you can use it. The last time, the big topic after the overview, or what you realized, is definitely the One Lake. The One Lake that is now the central storage for all of your elements within Fabric. Power BI, we used to be the Power BI user group. Of course, Power BI used to be always a big part, but now Power BI is one tool out of many. And all of them are accessing the One Lake. So we have one central point, one central storage where you can access your data. And you can use for this the common tools that already existed within Azure. So you could use the Data Factory, you can use Synapse Engineering, Synapse Data Science, the data warehousing, real-time analytics, and the Data Activator is not out yet. We will talk about this at a later point, but it's the common tools that you have in Azure, everything combined in the One Lake. Now, as last week, we showed a little bit how to use it. The real question is, how do we get our data to the One Lake? This was the first part, how you can access the data. So all elements, all tools within Fabric can access the One Lake. And as we mentioned last week, within the One Lake, everything will be saved within a Delta format with Parquet files and a Delta extension. And we can access them with all tools and with different techniques. So as mentioned before, we have our One Lake down here underneath everything. On top of the One Lake, we will have, to a later point, the One Security. So you also don't have to deal with this, the security within the different tools, because there's one central approach about the security within Fabric and One Lake. At the moment, this is not implemented yet, but it is about to come. And then you have a central security. And it doesn't matter with which tool you're accessing your data in the One Lake, the security is already implemented, and every user will just see whatever they are allowed to see. As mentioned, whatever we save into our One Lake will be saved or transformed into a Delta Parquet format. This means the basis is, again, Parquet, what is a columnar base, a little bit like Power BI. In Power BI, also the data format in Power BI is a columnar storage. As Brian already mentioned, also in Kusto, they're using a columnar storage. And this is now the way to go within One Lake. You actually also don't have to really deal with it, because the One Lake is doing that automatically for you. And later, when you want to access the data, you can do this with many, many different tools. For example, you can just write SQL queries, as Christian showed last week, against your Delta Parquet files. You can start with Spark and access your data. You could, as we've seen now from Brian, also take KQL, what is Kusto, and access your data. And all of these tools are talking Delta Parquet. And also, you don't have to really deal with it. You just connect against the One Lake, and all the different tools can use this technology. The slide in general tells you how you can access the One Lake, but to do a more hands-on example, today I thought I'd turn the whole thing a little bit around to make it a little more practical. And because most of us come from the Power BI world, so we have in our memory the way that we have somewhere data, let's say CSV, and we want to load it into Power BI. And the same, this should have been an error, for example, from Azure SQL to a Power BI file. This was the old way without Fabric and without our OneLake. Now, how do we get this data in the OneLake with Power BI? As already mentioned, in the center will be the OneLake, and somehow we have to get this data to the OneLake. For this, we have different tools. For example, we could use the data factory within the OneLake. Let's go back one slide. So the data factory we see here on the top left corner is a part of the OneLake, and this we can use to access it. I was a little bit too fast. Another approach would, for example, be with Synapse Data Engineering. You can create a OneLake and a lakehouse and access it. And at the end, it doesn't really matter what tool you use. All of them are saved within the OneLake, and all of them are automatically transformed to the Delta Parquet format. Once we have the data inside, we can use all of the tools to access this data. And again, we don't really have to deal with it when we have, for example, the direct lake mode within Power BI. We just do our DAX measures as we always would have done. Let's go one arrow. Let's add one arrow. So we will do our DAX measures as we always did, and Power BI is handling all this transition from Delta Parquet to Power BI. Also, for example, as we have now the OneLake as a central element, we don't have only Power BI as a result. Depending on your role, depending on which hat you're wearing, you will have different possibilities. So Power BI would be for reporting, one of the favorite tools that you can use. But in the direct lake mode, forgot to mention this, I will go a little bit more into details. What happens here, short details now, is until now we had to import the data to Power BI, or we had to do a direct query. What we can do now is a direct lake mode. So our Power BI is accessing directly live on the fly the Parquet format, what gives us the best of both worlds. So we have all the possibilities from a columnar storage. We have all the possibilities that we, from a DAX measure, we can do everything we can do with import mode. And at the same time, we don't have the limitations that our data model will become too big. We don't have to actually deal with it. The OneLake is handling that for us, and we can just use our reports. As mentioned, Power BI is from now on only one of the tools we can use in Fabric. At the same time, we could, for example, query exactly the same data also with a SQL server. We could use, as Brian showed, KQL, so we could use Kusto to query the same data. From now on, the OneLake with a Delta Parquet format is our central element, and we can choose between different tools to do that. I will show you now how we do that. So I created, that was my file from before. I created a completely new workspace called Fabric User Group. At the moment, we're in Power BI. For this, we will go to our Data Engineering tab, and we can now create different things in here. To get, for example, the lakehouse, we can call it Fabric UG Lakehouse and create our Fabric Lakehouse. A small hint, before or last week, Christian showed you already how the final result looked like, and he showed you also the OneLake Explorer. So you can install the OneLake Explorer, and then you see, like you have usually with your OneDrive, you see your OneLake in the Explorer as you usually would. So at the moment, for every workspace, it will create a folder. For my workspace, I had one New York taxi, and I had one premium per user. We will see later once we have data in this lakehouse, we will also have the other this workspace as a folder. So as we created now the lakehouse, we have now different ways to add data. For example, as mentioned last week, and also Brian showed now, we have the shortcut, what would allow us to create or to add already existing data. We can create a new notebook, and as Brian did now, program some Python or something similar to add the data. We can create a new data pipeline, or what most of you might be familiar with is the data flow. The data flow that we used until now in Power BI. Until now, the data flow was just saving the data in the normal Azure Data Lake Generation 2. The Generation 2 is now the Fabric data flow, and this data flow is allows to save the data directly to our OneLake. So we will do this as an example. And now you might know this interface as it is Power Query in the cloud. So we have our home, transform, add column, view, help. It really is Power Query. The only thing you have here a limited amount of sources. You can also add more, but you don't, at the moment, you don't have the full amount of data sources that you have in Power BI. So it's not all of the 170 data sources. It's a limited amount. But as you can see, there is quite a lot going on. For my case, will just load the data from the SQL Server. So if we go back to our slides, this would be the case here. We have the data still in our Azure SQL Server as we had before. We use now our data engineering to load the data directly to the Parquet. And within the engineering here, we will use our data flow. So where am I? Here's my browser. Now I need my database. Give me 1 second. So here we are. I should have prepared, like Brian and the chefs in the TV, my database. That's my Azure SQL database. I already stored my credential in former Power BI reports, so it already recognized that it has already an existing connection. I can go to next, and now I can query my SQL Server as I usually can. In my case, I just want to load the Contoso retail data. So for our case, we could just go to our basic tables. For example, for our fact online sales 2021, this is like an updated version of the original fact table. I can add some dimensional tables, for example, a product dimension. I could add a geography. A date table is always a good idea. Let's also take customer dimension. And I think this should do it for the first try. If we click now on create, again, nothing changed so far. We have Power Query in the browser. We will load now our data here. We can do all kinds of transformations. So I can go through my different tables. I could rename them. For example, my fact online sales 2021, I could rename to fact online sales. I think in the product table, I have a few columns I don't really need. For example, the product description. I can just delete it. At the side, as you know, also nothing new from Power BI. It will from Power Query, it will create a new step. You see here also in the green arrow, Power Query query folding will happen. And I can do my transformations within Power Query as I always would. After I'm finished with my different transformations, I have down here one thing that is pretty new. Now suddenly I have down here a data destination, and here the lakehouse appears. So I can go now here on the small symbol and connect to my lakehouse. Now I see all of my lakehouses within my tenant. So for example, if I'm now in the Fabric user group, that's the lakehouse I just created. That should be empty. And now it asks me how the table should be called. In my case, fact online sales should be fine. I can do a more granular definition. For example, I can now define if new data should just be appended, or if we do a full load. So for example, if the data should be replaced. In my case, I always, for example, want to do a full load, so I will choose replace. I also see all of my columns here. I could, in this page also, if I don't want to delete them, I could just disable, for example, that a few columns should be loaded. I could change again here the source type, whatever it is, and afterwards I can save the setting. This destination setting I have now for every table. I have the same for my product. If I don't do anything, it should automatically add it to my lakehouse. So let's go again to the Fabric user group, to my Fabric lakehouse, click next, and now I should have the same approach. What I wanted to show here is, and this was, I was a little bit surprised the first time I loaded something with the new data flow, a few columns here were suddenly removed. Now the question is, why are they removed? Because probably I want to add them. When I go here, it says, that was a little bit too fast. Okay, it doesn't work with Zoomit. The column cannot be included because it has a complex type. So we have a few types. Okay, and this time, sorry, that was not what I wanted to show. At the beginning, when I was loading, I let the tick in that the foreign key tables will be loaded as well. So these are the ones here at the end. Actually, we anyway don't want them, so we could remove them. What I wanted to show, okay, I think last time it didn't happen at the customer table. Let's give it one more try. So let's see. Now here's also loading everything properly. Okay, so if you have errors in the, it's doing a quick check. And actually, if you would have errors within your data, you would, the column would be disabled, and you would here have a small note, a notification that there is error in your data. And you could here then, it's a small button that says you could fix it. And like this, the data that is that has errors will be, I think, replaced by blanks. And like this, you can fix the data. So if columns are missing, always check the setting for your data destination. And if we want that, we can publish it either later or we can publish it right now. In my case, I want to publish it right now. And now the data flow is created in the background. We see now our data flow is existing here. At the same time, we have here the data flow staging lakehouse and our lakehouse itself. I think it's loading right now. Yeah, we see the publish is in progress, and slowly the data will appear in our Fabric lakehouse. So if we go now here to our tables, at the moment there's nothing, but slowly it will load. What we did now is exactly here the first path. So we took our data from the Azure SQL database. We loaded it with our Azure Synapse Data Engineering, Fabric Data Engineering, and loaded right now from here to our Contoso database. And although the beginning everything was an Azure SQL database, the engine will automatically transform it to a Delta Parquet format and save it in our OneLake. With this format later, we can then access it via Power BI or SQL. At the moment, this load will now most likely take a minute or two, or 3, 4. Here we have the first data already. So if we refresh now, we see already it created the first tables, and the first data already appeared here. Last time, you might remember from Christian's presentation that there were also some files. In our case, it's transforming it directly to the Delta tables. I could also add some files. So I could now say also I want to directly upload files. And this then could be, for example, JSON or I think CSV and Parquet mainly. And you can automatically then upload your file. You can manually upload your files here. And then based from the files, you can still create new tables. That's what Christian showed you last week, so I don't have a focus on that. And slowly the data will be loaded now into the lakehouse. What also happens at the same time, if we refresh here, it doesn't do anything. So recently maybe it's from my installation, but I had to close it and load it again. The One Lake app, it had a few issues with refreshing. Let's see if it works right now. Yes, that helped. And as you see now, we have now our Fabric user group workspace, or the folder for that also appeared now here in our Explorer. So with a One Lake extension, you now have this simple in your Explorer linked. And now you see the different warehouses, lakehouses that we created here. And for example, what we open here in the background is the Fabric user group lakehouse. And here we see the same structure as here. Files should be empty at the moment. It is. Then we have the tables itself. And here it is DIM customer, date, geography, and product. Let's go to the DIM customer. And what you can see now is that it created the files as Parquet. And in the background, it created the Delta log. This is the Delta part of the Parquet files that you get the Delta tables. If you go here, you can see, you can actually take a look at the JSONs. They store the difference between the Delta between the different versions. And like this, you can go back in time and so on. Christian told last week. So I will not go into detail, but you see the files here. So although we loaded the data directly from a SQL server, it all transformed it to the Parquet, to the Delta file. Let's quickly go back again to our slide. This is what happened here. We loaded our data from the Azure SQL with a Synapse data engineering, and in our One Lake, automatically it created the Delta Parquet files. The moment they're still being loaded. So let's see if we already have a few more tables. No, they're loading in the background. So there's not much we can do right now. What we could also do is, and this is the nice part, we are not focused within the lakehouse to one single data source. So it's not that I can only load data from the Azure SQL. For example, I could also, in addition, load CSV and also from, for example, completely different files. If we go back to our lakehouse, we could now say get data and then choose again, for example, a data pipeline, or we could load data with another data flow. We can also upload files directly. In our case, I want to add an Excel file from a SharePoint. So I choose again our new data flow. I will now say import from Excel, and I can have here already the option to browse my OneDrive. And within my OneDrive, I have a what effect folder, and I go to 99 budget, and I have here a sample Excel file. So now my data flow is connecting directly to my Excel file that is within my OneDrive, could be also SharePoint or anything else. I see now here the table that we have. In our case, that's a financial table. And I say I want to create that table. Now, as before, again, we can do all kind of transformations in Power Query. So I could change rows, delete anything, discount band, for example, I don't need, so I delete it. If, for example, I want to create a key from month, number, and year, I could also do that, but I have already a date. So most likely I don't need the other files, the other columns, as I can connect our date directly to our dates table. And again, here I can choose where I want to load it to our lakehouse. Let's take the Fabric user group workspace, our Fabric user group lakehouse. Let's call it budget, the table. And now we can see here we have now the effect that I wanted to show before. So a few of the columns are not loaded.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
What would be the added value of loading the Excel file in the lake? And why not just reading the data from OneDrive?
So if you want to do a direct lake mode, the files have to be in the lake house. So you cannot just add an Excel file to a data model that is in direct lake mode. So you have to first add it to the one lake, and then you can add it to your data model.
Yeah, this is clear, but what will be the added value of adding it to the lake?
If you want to analyze it, you have to load it to the lake.
Just to benefit.
Or you mean in general, what is the advantage of the direct lake?
Yes.
So we will do this right after the demo, but in general, until now, from Power BI, you could import the data. This is, for example, what you mean. You could import it directly from OneDrive, or you could use a direct query. So whenever someone was clicking something in Power BI, a query will be created and sent to the underlying database. The disadvantage here was with the direct query mode, you had big limitations. You could not use all Power Query functions. You could not use all DAX functions, especially not the more complex ones. There was always a delay because the SQL query has to be created. It has to be sent against the data source. Then, transactional databases, they can take quite a few seconds until a query is executed. So it had a very bad user experience as it was slow and you could not do many things. The best version was import, but in import you had limits. In the normal Power BI Pro account, you have the limit of 1 GB per data set. In the premium capacity, you have the limits of the capacity. For example, in a P1, you have 25 GB of RAM. If you talk about big data scenarios, something like Brian showed, if you have like millions or billions of rows, the 25 gigabytes and also the whole import process can be quite nasty. It's not a nice approach with big amounts of data. And what you can do with the direct lake mode is you have the best of both worlds. So Power BI will always do a direct query to the Delta Parquet, to the one lake. But it's an in-memory technology. So it's more or less the same as a Power BI dataset, is a columnar storage that is in memory. So you have all the advantages of an import, you have all the DAX functionalities, and at the same time, you don't have a limit on your data amount because it's a file-based storage system, and you can just do as much data as you want. I think there are certain limits, but they're very, very up.
Okay, so in case you need to deal with a large amount of data, it makes absolutely sense. But if we are still talking of basic export from a system and we are talking about few thousand records, then here there is no real added value.
No,
right?
no, you don't need to do that. The only thing is, for example, if you want to reuse the data. So if you don't only want to use it in Power BI, let's go one slide back. If you, for example, you have a data engineer and he wants to do some Python stuff, data science stuff, he could use the same data if you load it once to the data lake. If you use it, someone else wants to do a KQL query against the same data, then it makes sense to only load it once to your data lake. But if you're in self-service mode, you have one small data set, you want to analyze it yourself, you don't have to do the whole thing. It's okay. The more data you have, the better the technology is.
Okay, thank you.
But Dennis, if you want to use the one lake, 1 second, then you have to load all the data to your one lake. Yes?
Yeah, because I was struggling with the same question, but a similar one. So why not store it all in SQL? But to the best of my knowledge, one lake is better performing on unstructured data, whereas SQL is on structured data. So this is the added value. It's sort of one lake is an SQL days on steroids. Is that my correct understanding, or am I wrong there?
Not in a general way, you're right, but you have other issues with SQL. So for example, if you have, let's say, 1 billion rows, you store them in your SQL database, and you want to access them with Power BI. You have two ways. First, you would copy all of your 1 billion rows to Power BI. That's the import mode. Maybe I will go 2 slides ahead. Let's do that. So if you have in your source many data, a lot of data, and you really want to import it, here's the import mode. You actually use your Power BI dataset and you import it from your data source. So here's your SQL, and you have to import it. So if your data source here is a SQL database and you have 1 billion rows, you actually copy 1 billion rows here to Power BI. And this has the disadvantage, it might take forever. You might run out of memory because Power BI has the limits of your capacity. For example, 25 gigabytes for a P1 capacity. And at the end, if it works with the import, you're fine. But if you want to do a refresh, you have to load all of the data again. And it's quite an overhead to copy all the time all the data from your SQL server to your imported data set. If you don't want to import, if you want to do a direct query, this means your Power BI dataset is not importing anything, but every time in the report a user is clicking anything or you change a filter, every visual is creating a SQL query, sending it to your SQL database. The SQL database has to digest the query, has to create a result, and will send it back to your dataset, and then the user will see the result. And this always takes a little time, even if you have a very fast database, because it has to create a query, it has to send it, there is some delay. And we're used for instant reaction of the website, of the report. So even if it struggles for 1-2 seconds, what is quite fast for direct query, users still will complain a little bit about the bad performance. Next to that, you have very big limitations. Because for example, the table functions, they don't work with direct query. Every really complex DAX formula will not work with direct query. So if you have a huge amount of data in your data warehouse, you have the choice between the two approaches, but both are not ideal. And this is actually where the direct lake mode joins the race, because what you do here is actually more or less the same as before. So every time the user is clicking something, the Power BI service is sending something to your OneLake, but the technology is the same as a Power BI dataset. So the data is in memory, it has a columnar storage, and it's really built to analyze data. A relational database like a SQL server is not made to analyze data, it's made for transactions mainly. So this is a lot faster. And then you have all the advantages. You can use all DAX functions within your report, and you have the fast response time. And at the same time, you don't have to import anything. All of the data stores here in your OneLake, in your Parquet files. I hope. Did this help a little?
Yeah, what I learned is that the data lake will, or the OneLake will increase the performance and the response time of Power BI.
Especially the more files, the more data you have, the better it is. And as we had the first question before, do I have to do that? No, definitely not. So if you just have a few data, if you have a few thousand rows, you don't have to do anything. Just stay with your import modes. I also got the question, do we have to change everything? No, you don't have to change anything. So just stay with whatever you have. If you're happy and satisfied, but if you want to do more, if you want to be a little faster, if you have more data, then the OneLake is an additional option that is filling the gap between import mode and direct query mode.
Denis, I have a question here. I mean, what we don't see is that the live connection mode that was against the Power BI dataset, and in fact, DAX queries.
You mean the direct query?
No, the live connection to a Power BI dataset, basically.
That's the same as import mode. You can think of.
Yeah, but the DAX query, or DAX actually has been built for Power BI datasets, and how does it look like in the direct lake mode? Is the DAX query now translated to some native query against the data warehouse, against the lake house? Or how does that work? Because under the hood, I'm not fully understanding that. And I mean, it's great, of course, this performance to have the same as in live connections. But how does it turn out there?
So there is a translation. The engine had to be adapted. I'm not fully aware of all details because the technology is also quite new, also for me. What is happening under the hood? The Parquet files, they will be, or the columnar storage, it will be loaded to the RAM. And like this, it's actually the same as an import mode. The only difference is the Microsoft somehow made it possible to load huge amount in no time, in a few seconds. That's actually the biggest change they did, or the thing that I'm so fascinated about. From the under the hood, you still write it in DAX. Somehow there is a translation, but I personally don't know the details. I know the engine changed a bit. It's not the original VertiPack, as it's now dealing with this Parquet Delta Lake construct. But it's kind of similar from what I heard from different interviews and podcasts. And I'm not sure. Okay. Maybe our Microsoft friends in the meeting, Meinrad, and is someone else here?
I believe you explained it quite good.
Yeah. Are you happy with me?
Yeah. More than happy.
And then I would have a follow-up question. Whether
yeah.
I mean, is then it's a bit a risky question, but is DAX still the right language? Is still, you know, is that really the right language? Because DAX is quite narrow at the end, you know, and we've seen.
Why do you mean it's quite narrow?
It's complicated to learn. It's very specific for the VertiPack engine, and I mean, here in principle we would have more possibilities. I understand that you want to have some backward compatibility. I think that's all fine. That's all great. But yeah, I mean, just the provocative question is could there be another language that takes the place of DAX?
I don't think so. So in theory, sure, there could be another one, but in real life, I'm pretty sure there will not be another one. So DAX is now, I mean, all of the middleware is using now, if you take, for example, Excel, they're using MDX and DAX. That's the way Microsoft chose. And I think also it's a pretty good way, because I know DAX is not easy, or as Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari say, it's simple but not easy. And I know the learning curve is quite steep. Microsoft is working on new tools to make your experience better and easier. But DAX is the way to go, and now even more than before. So I cannot imagine there will be a change. At the moment, also, there are no other tools. So the VertiPack engine and now also the direct lake mode, they work with DAX. And from my point of view, this will not change, at least not short term.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Maybe one sentence in that context. If we think about ADX and CalcKQL, you can very easily integrate also ADX functions into Power BI and combine it there. So there the door is a little bit opening. On the front end side, you still have DAX, but you can extend DAX with KQL functions, which makes it extremely powerful.
I totally agree with Meinrad. Was this fine, Philip, or do you have more questions?
Very good. Thank you very much.
All right. Then now we're a little bit over time, so I hope the load is finished. I will do it quite fast. What you could do here, we wanted to load our Excel. I will just do the quick way. I will fix it. Now it will, I think, remove this. I'm not sure, to be honest. The lines that are not valid. You can save it, and now you can load the same publish now. You can load the same data to the same lakehouse. So at the moment now, the data flow 2, that's the one we just created with the Excel, will also load data to the lakehouse. The load should be finished by now, at least of the other tables. So we have now our facts table, we have now our dim product, dim geography, and so on. Let's see if there's also some data available. No, that is surprising, to be honest. That's also the demo god again. So usually it should have some data. For some reason, it didn't load my fact table. As we're actually already at the end of the time, I will just quickly show you how you can now create a report with a direct lake mode. And this is when you're in your lake house, you just create here on top, 2 new Power BI data sets. With this, you will see a familiar view in a few seconds. So it will now analyze what tables exist. I will load all of them. You can confirm. And once the screen will change to the data modeling, it actually will look more or less exactly like the data modeling within Power BI desktop. So now it will load all of your data. It will, the tables. You can now do all of your relationships. For example, let's take the date key and the date key here. And now I did a one-on-one. That was not very smart. It should be a one-to-many with single direction. You can do all of your relationships. You can create new measures also here. For example, you could now say number, come on, okay, it doesn't recognize, number of rows would then, for example, be a count rows. Can we do this a little bigger? Yes, of my facts table. I have the US keyboard. That's the reason why. Let's see. I don't know where to close the brackets. It's doing it automatically. Like this, you can add different measures. And what you have to be aware, it already shows here, your changes will be permanent and automatically saved. So do this when you're not right before a weekend, as all of your changes will be saved immediately. And like this, you can create your data model. And if you want to create a report, you can click on New Report, and then you will create a new report based on the data set in direct query mode. Now it has data. It actually has, what do we have? A few million. We have now 12 million rows. Although it didn't show in the fact table, we have them here. So we could now analyze this by whatever you want. A color name, always my favorite. I didn't do the connection with a product dimensional table. That's the reason we get the same value everywhere. But actually, you can start analyzing. I think with the date I did, give me one more second to try with the year. Calendar year looks good. And then, yes, we also get different values for every year. If I would fix the reporting, the relationships in the data model, this would work. Now I can say my report and save it to my workspace. I can also start a report from Power BI. Like I can go here, say I want to create a new report, and then I can create to my existing data set in the cloud. So I can go to get data. I can choose fabric, and now I can say I want to connect to my lakehouse. And in my lakehouse, I have my fabric user group lakehouse. And now I'm connected live to my data, and I can create within Power BI Desktop my report as I always would do it. All right. That was the approach we did here. We loaded a CSV file.
Just
yeah,
a
sure.
quick question. In case the lakehouse is used, let's say, by many users, is there any plan to provide some tools to monitor, to categorize, to register all these sources of information? Because it very quickly could become a nightmare just to find your data.
Yes, so new tools are about to appear. So you can actually filter here for different things, because what is really, it's getting quite fast, quite messy. So I agree there with you, Frederick. If, for example, I only want to see my lake houses, I think that at the moment, the best way is to filter. So you actually, now I only see my 2 lake houses that I created. It makes it a lot easier. In general, now there will also be soon domains, or they already exist. You can now categorize your workspace into different domains. So if you go, for example, to your data hub, I could now go here and filter my domains for sales. And now I would only see my artifacts from my domain sales. There are new ways to make this kind of things easier because, yeah, as it's getting complicated, it's getting quite messy quite fast. But there are more tools about to come. But at the moment, we have mainly the domains, and we mainly have the possibility to filter within a workspace.
So
Was
does
this
it
your?
mean, so a data architect has to set up all these domains before opening the door to the crowd, or?
At the end, I mean, no. You still have for the normal end user. Let's be honest, the normal end user will not write any queries in data science, data warehousing, and so on. The normal user will have his report, and the normal user will consume his report. And here, still, the best way is to create an app from a workspace. You also have the different audiences. So the normal user mainly will just work with apps. For the normal user, nothing should change. If you're more deeper into the data field, so if you work with different areas, you have to make yourself quite familiar. I'm not sure if it's possible to filter out or if this is planned. Meinrad, I'm not sure if you know anything about this. But at the moment, everyone would see here all of the tabs as far as I know.
Oh, same to my knowledge, but maybe it changes.
Maybe. It's usually a progress, as we know from the past, but a good one. Does this help, Frederick?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, then I think we're at the end for today. The 3 different modes we already discussed. Then this was again the slide to summarize everything, and we can load from different sources, also from Amazon, Google. It doesn't have to be Azure. Or within the Microsoft universe, we can now load more or less everything to the OneLake, and the OneLake will create for us the Delta format Parquet files. Reminder for the next meetups, as usually they run on the first Thursday of the month, always from 4 to 6. Our next call will be at the 7th of September. And next month, we will continue again with our fabric journey. And in addition, we have a very nice, very special guest. We have Caspar de Jong. He is a product manager from the Fabric team, or used to be Power BI. I think now it's Fabric. And probably you also know him from his podcast, Caspar on BI. So, and Caspar is also from Microsoft. So I highly recommend it. I've also seen a few of his presentations. They're always great, seriously, always great. We didn't decide on a topic yet, but I'm pretty sure it will be Fabric related. So next month, 7th of September, I wanted to post also the link of the user group in the chat. This I will do in a minute. And then I would be happy if you could join on our new meetup, not the meetup page, on our Microsoft community page. Because as mentioned, in 1 more month, the meetup will be gone. Except for this, we're at the end of today. Thank you both from Christian's and from my side. This is Christian's dance for you. I don't get an own dance. Maybe I should negotiate. And if there are no more questions, I wish you a very nice evening and hope to see you in a month. Bye, everyone.